The following program is a podcast1.com production. This is Corolla Digital.
Hey, Joe Coy here, reminding you to check out my podcast, The Koi Pond. This week we got Timothy Bradley, the champ, a.k.a. Desert Storm.
And I think the sport could become better when you have, guys that are willing to face each other. Yep. Yeah, I mean, but a lot of these guys, they just want to fluff up their resume and fluff up their, I call it robbing the bank. Tired of seeing this flubbish little, whack matches that, guys are overmatched or, guys are undermatched. Yeah. So I'm not for that, man. I don't feel that, man. I really don't think that builds legacy. I don't think that builds anything.
Mm-hmm. You can listen to The Koi Pond for free on iTunes, the Podcast One app, or go to joecoy.com, JOKOY.com. New episodes every Tuesday and Thursday. The Koi Pond, not Joy, Koi.
Welcome to Dr. Drew Podcast. I have two very exciting guests today. Again, support the podcast, support the Quick Fill on the Amazon banner, check out This Life. But I'm going to get right to my guest. I have Patrick Krill. He is the director of the Hazelden Betty Ford Foundation Legal Professional Program. He's a licensed attorney. He's a board-certified alcohol and drug counselor, and he is interested in the phenomenon of addiction in attorneys. I'm going to bring him in later, but now I want to welcome Ken Kratz. Ken, you may know Ken from the Stephen Avery case. He has an upcoming book trilogy, Avery, Dassey, and Teresa, 3 books coming out in fall of 2016. And in that, Ken is detailing the Making a Murderer stories. Ken, I so appreciate you being here and sharing your thoughts with us.
Dr. Drew, thanks for having me.
So, shall we start with your story? I want you to kind of drive this, or the Making a Murderer story. I'll let you kind of, whichever you feel most passionately you want to talk about first.
Well, I certainly have strong feelings about both. With your upcoming guests, why don't we launch right into the the difficulties, and not only with attorneys generally, but my case specifically, how I became a dependent on prescription drugs and really fueled a lot of other unhealthy behaviors that I involved myself in.
What drugs did you end up strung out on?
I was dependent on Xanax and Ambien, and then Vicodin. So that particular cocktail, which I guess isn't all that uncommon. The benzodiazepine with the Ambien, and then the opiate as well.
Well, I will just say you're lucky to be here.
It's obviously dangerous. Heath Ledger and lots of others, are really famous for not doing quite as well. So, but what it caused, and of course with my the pressures that I was under after the Avery case, this all began. I would suspect as a result of the Avery case. That was a case that I was very much in the public eye, very much in the limelight for 18 straight months. We were on the front page and really in a very, very high profile case, and then it all stopped. After that all went back to normal, if I can use that term. I really struggled. I was having a really difficult time, and I had developed some real anxiety issues, and of course, prescribed Xanax and the sleeping issues with the Ambien, and it just really got away from me to the point where I started needing those things during my day. I was still able to, I think, perform my job duties pretty well, but obviously some of the other behaviors that occurred, not as a result of it, but certainly lowered inhibitions and other kinds of things where some of my other personality challenges raised the surface my narcissism and some other things, and so it really was a convergence of my personality with the use of the drugs that led to really erratic and deplorable behaviors. It wasn't until after treatment I was after this whole thing kind of blew up. I became suicidal. Actually, put a gun in my mouth, and was really having a hard time with having kind of gone from very well respected and obviously very into my job to really vilified within maybe a 48 or 72 hour period. And so I was lucky enough to have a psychologist friend who called General Path down in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and got into Dr. Karn's program, and of course with the sexual acting out and the combination of the drugs, I was really in a dark place, and I'm really fortunate to have come out on the other side, after 5.5 years of sobriety from prescription drugs at all. My involvement in NA and SAA and other kinds of things. I'm really fortunate now as a defense attorney and just as a person in recovery to be able to help people that struggle with their own addiction issues.
Okay, I want to unpack all that because a lot there, including
there is a lot there, right?
Including. Let me just start with you're a defense attorney now. That's a switch.
Yeah, well, it is, but it not a whole lot different as far as reviewing the case. When I was a prosecutor, I was very much able to look at a referral that would come to me, at a case that would come to me as a defense attorney. You look for the weaknesses right away. You look for the holes in the case. You look for what are the possible defenses. And, of course, now you do the exact same thing, only it's to exploit those defenses rather than to shore them up with additional investigation or the prosecution ways. So it is a change, but I know that you've had lots of guests, lots of panelists and things that have made the switch very, very seamlessly, and it really isn't as hard as
it always surprises me. It always shocks me when I hear it. But I know that you guys make great defense attorneys afterwards. Let's go back to the medication, because I blame my profession for so much of stories like yours, and I've seen a million of them. Most of them don't survive because that combo of benzo and opiate is a fatal combination frequently, as you mentioned, Heath Ledger. Are you angry with your doctor for having prescribed this stuff and kept you on it without any sort of real supervision or warnings?
I don't think so, and again, my Xanax use specifically wasn't really that much over the top. I wasn't using any more than maybe 2 milligrams a day.
But Ken, let me stop you. If I had a patient on 2 milligrams a day for more than a week, I'd have you airlifted. I would call every pharmacy in town. That is a big dose of Xanax to be on for a sustained period of time. And I know you're having a lot of things. Part of it is you start having withdrawal after about a week or so. So your panic starts getting worse. You start shortening the intervals of dosing, and off you go.
Right, and the prescription was for one, and then I was self-medicating and stuff.
But they should have been all over that. That should have been all over it. And then go ahead.
That's right. I'm not, but I don't. I'm never the type that's gonna blame others or things like that. But it is a dialogue that's got to be had more than it even has. I understand that your profession's really looking at that really hard. And
Finally.
Same thing with Vicodin and the other opiates as well. I mean, they're just handed out like candy so much, and of course that that combo, when you add Vicodin to the Ambien and the Xanax, well, it's Katie bar the door. So
that's right.
That's how that turns out.
And so, what happened to you behaviorally? So now you're strung out. You're not yourself, and you're getting probably depressed and desperate, and you don't really know what's happening to you. What happens?
Well, I was having some marital issues as well, and it became a situational thing. When I say that that it was like the inhibitions just seemed to melt away, and when I was talking about sexual acting out, it manifests itself in extramarital affairs and hitting on women eventually within my profession, within my professional world. That again, looking back, is absolutely deplorable. Crime victims, and I don't know if you realize, but in Wisconsin, I was the chairman of the Crime Victims' Rights Board, and so crime victims for 12 years was kind of my thing. I helped draft the legislation for crime victims' rights, and so to have eventually, I got involved in this texting situation with a crime victim, to have identified a crime victim as somebody that someday I'd like to develop a relationship with. It doesn't get much worse than that. When you look back on those kind of things, you just say, what the hell were you thinking? I mean, there's just no path to any kind of good decision making or upside to that. And you really, as far as you hear the term, of course, I don't know if you subscribe to this, but your brain is really hijacked.
Yeah.
You really have
100%.
no opportunity to make any meaningful decisions, at least with the front part of your brain, where you're supposed to be making them, and you're making them with your pleasure center, with the middle part, and you know where that's going to lead, and it's never a good situation.
And attorneys are particularly difficult and resistant to get into treatment. Did it take a bit to get you to sort of really look at things?
Well, it took me losing everything, Dr. Drew. I mean, it was, as I mentioned, I was able to kind of keep the plates spinning in all my different lives pretty well. We as attorneys, I think, are pretty good at multitasking, and especially when you have a relatively powerful position as district attorney, there aren't too many people that are going to call you on things, and so that is a benefit. But when you're struggling with addiction issues, it's a real detriment, because when people are looking the other way, they're certainly not doing you any favors by doing that. And I think as it turned out, as my behavior became more and more erratic and more risk-taking behavior, it just got to the point where there wasn't going to be a good ending to this. I'm really fortunate to not have engaged in even worse behavior than I did, and the fact that I lost my career and basically everything. But I just the best thing, you've heard this, I'm sure, as well. Best thing that ever happened to me was my having crashed from that whole situation, that craziness that was my life. And when I kind of woke up in the middle of this firestorm that was around me, and you ask yourself, what happened? How did I get here? Was really life changing.
And how did you find treatment? How was that for you?
Well, it was interesting. I'm sure you're familiar with the facility that I'm talking about.
I am. I know Patrick very, very well.
Yeah, very, very intense place. There are only 22 individuals in treatment, and when you talk about hypersexuality or sex addiction or those kind of issues, it's such a secretive, shame-filled kind of thing that that you engage yourself in. But the people that were in treatment with me all had very, very similar stories. All, physicians or CEOs are really high functioning, very high profile jobs. I always joked about it. One of the directors down there, of course, they don't like to watch TV, which is fantastic, because what was happening when I was in treatment for 5 weeks, I was on the front page and there was this firestorm going on, and I really didn't know anything about it, which is, again, I think very fortunate that they do that. But as I kind of came out of my fog, one of the directors said, "Who are you? And why are you on CNN? Why do we hear all these stories? You don't seem like you're all that important, really, because
Wow.
the others that, and of course I won't violate anything, but I was the least well-known person that was in that group.
It was interesting.
So it was really a interesting group of individuals.
If you remember, I'm sure you do, that Tiger Woods went down to that program, and when he came out, he was talking like a recovering person. He was talking about his peers and being observant. I was like, oh my God, he's getting it.
Right.
And then he seemed to bail on the whole thing. And then look what happened to his career. I mean, the good things happen when you find recovery. Let me.
Let me just, if I can, because I'm really proud of this. After that particular stint down there, there were about 8 or 10 of us individuals that went through that same thing, and it's really it's so much trauma, and you're coming through this together. There's this bonding that goes on. We formed a support group, a conference call, that for 4 years, every Saturday for an hour and a half, we religiously checked in with each other, and were able to continue our recovery program. It just really starts in something like that, and you gotta move forward. But to be able to really have on a weekly basis to have assisted each other in that process really was something that helped a lot as well. Thanks for letting me talk about that.
Oh my God, it's fantastic. And did Dr. Carnes use a circle plan back then?
Unfortunately, his wife was passing away at the time. You might remember, and that was back in the fall of 2010, and so he was absent much from the program. But they certainly had really high quality professionals that directed you. But it's such an intense. You go from being the big man on campus to really just being another blade of grass, down in that situation, and really an interesting situation with 13 hours of treatment a day and doing everything with these guys. And of course, it's the ability to kind of patch yourself back together, and it really is just crisis management at that point. 6 weeks isn't going to be enough to do very much other than kind of stem the tide of your behavior and give you the tools, and then it's up to you if you're going to take advantage of what you've learned, or if you're going to kind of slip back into things. Like I was lucky enough to have come back into the northeast Wisconsin area. We had many SAA programs, which is really was really fortunate for that area of the country to have that many people. And when I walked into my program for the first time, my home group then, back in the Appleton, Wisconsin area, and I recognized so many people, and it was just such an empowering moment, such a welcoming event to walk in like that and realize, I thought I was the only one that was involving myself in this kind of thing, and suffering and isolation and all those behaviors and the shame cycle, and then the whole thing is just so terrible. But what's so great about it is when you realize then first of all, it's not just you. There's lots of people that suffer with the same thing, but that you don't have to suffer anymore in isolation. That there's people out there that are designed to help you. And I know that you'll be talking to one of those. The Wisconsin Lawyer Assistance Program is fantastic. And even before I left General Path, they made contact with me. They hooked me up with a sponsor, with a peer, another lawyer who had gone through that even before I got back to Wisconsin, and really I've been very active ever since in helping other lawyers that are suffering with various kinds of addictions here in Wisconsin.
Ken, hold on one second. I'm going to bring in Patrick, who's been listening to your story. And Patrick, this is you and I have spoken in the past about these kinds of stories and how tough it is for attorneys. Ken's story is actually kind of thrilling because things went precisely the way you would hope and pray it would.
They did. They did go exactly the way you would hope and pray they would. But after, as Ken mentioned, he essentially lost everything. And Ken, let me just start by saying it's nice to make your acquaintance, and congratulations on the 5.5 years of recovery. That's fantastic. But it does sound like once you made the decision that you were going to reach out for help, you were fortunate enough. You had a friend who was a psychologist, and they were able to get you somewhere. But so much of what I heard in your story just now is really consistent with the experience of a lot of attorneys and judges that I work with from around the country. You know, starting from how the addiction takes hold, it's really sort of a form of self-medication to handle your anxiety, to deal with your anxiety. And then I think the way you put it was it just sort of slowly got away from you. And then, you know, the fact that people in your professional orbit were kind of turning the other way, or, you know, looking the other way, turning a blind eye. That's something that I see all the time as well.
Well,
and,
I would think you and I discussed it's more active than turning a blind eye. It's a little bit of a, you know, boys will be boys, almost an endorsement of some of these behaviors.
Well, there's that too, because drinking is primarily that's the substance of choice. Alcohol is the substance of choice primarily in the legal profession, but it is so normalized within the culture. And so not only is it a boys will be boys type attitude or atmosphere, there's also a little bit of a reluctance to call someone else on their behavior because it's, you know, you'd be doing that from your own glass house. So I think I don't know if that was part of your experience, Ken, if that was, you know, kind of the culture in your office. But certainly that's something that I see quite a bit of.
Mm-hmm. You know, there's almost an institutional propping up of attorneys, especially ones that are struggling. And now that I don't know if you're familiar with Linda Albert from our program in Wisconsin, but you know, she's really reaching out and really saying what a disservice that very thing is to other legal professionals. Not only are they affecting individual clients, but really the career choice that they've made and the attorney. I've lost the word here. Anyway, they've really done a disservice to our profession by furthering that kind of behavior. And I hope that, and what I hope comes out of it, and what I've tried to do with my story, in being very public about this, is try to reduce the shame. To the extent that at least I can with my individual story, and say, you know, if I can make it through the media storm that I've done, and that there's others like me that are willing, without judgment, to help these other professionals, and they can reach out in a much sooner fashion. They don't have to lose everything before they seek help from the Lawyer Assistance Program.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. We need a lot more attorneys like yourself coming forward and sharing their stories of recovery to make it easier for others to reach out. And it's a small world, because I know Linda quite well. She was actually one of my co-authors on a study that we just published with the American Bar Association in February it was just came out in the beginning of February in the Journal of Addiction Medicine. We published a study on the current rates of substance use and other mental health challenges in the profession. So I've been working closely with Linda over the last couple of years on that project, and she's great. And that's really heartening to hear that you are involved with WISLAP, with the Wisconsin Lawyers Assistance Program, because I'm sure not only are you able to get a lot from it yourself, but it's really that giving back and being somebody who's there to share your story and, like I said, help bring other attorneys into the fold, because I don't know if you saw our study, Ken, but it did. We got a fair amount of press coverage with it, and I know Wisconsin Lawyer Magazine actually did a pretty lengthy.
Oh no, I saw it. It's fantastic. Linda's been not shy about passing on those results. They're staggering, actually, and they're really. If that doesn't open your eyes or open others in the profession, then really nothing's going to.
Patrick, technically this is weird having the two phone conversations, so I'm going to have to let you go in a minute. But before I do, I want you to do two things. I want you to review the data and tell people where they can go if they want to make contact with you.
So what we found on a really global sense is that the legal profession has a lot of challenges. We're just not doing well in terms of our substance use and mental health problems. We found that between 21 and 36% of licensed, currently practicing in the legal profession attorneys are problem drinkers. 28% are struggling with clinically significant levels of depression. 19% are struggling with clinically significant levels of anxiety. Some of the other major findings were that the two biggest barriers to attorneys seeking help, and again, this really does tie in so much with Ken's story, were a fear of others finding out and general concerns about confidentiality, which is why I'm so glad that he's out there reaching out. It was published in the Journal of Addiction Medicine, and it was published open access. You can find it there on the Journal of Addiction Medicine website. And I can be reached through my email, which is pkrill@hazeldenbettyford.org, or if you just Google Patrick Krill Hazelden, you'll be able to find a lot of my stuff there.
And we will put up all the links and things on our website too as well. So Patrick, again, it's a privilege talking to you as always. We will have a This Life podcast up with you and me and Bob Forrest. And I'm going to continue on with Ken, but I'm going to say goodbye to you, Patrick, and then take a break. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you,
Patrick. Good to meet you.
You betcha. And Ken's going to stay with me. Ken Kratz has got upcoming book trilogy, Avery, Dassey, and Teresa. We're going to talk about that. We're going to flush out a little more of Ken's story, and we're going to come back right after the break.
Hey, it's Chris Loxamana here, just reminding you to check out the podcast Resume, where I talk to all kinds of people with the most interesting careers, and we find out how they got there. Some of my guests include Dr. Drew, Joe Coy, Backstreet Boys, business owners, a bank robber, and they all have unique stories that I think you'd really enjoy hearing. In addition to that, Dawson, Gary, Matt, and the guys at Corolla Digital hang out with me each week for a sideshow we call the Water Cooler. It's a lot of fun. We'd love for you to join us, and you can find all of it by subscribing to the podcast Resume on iTunes, the Podcast One app, or check it out at chrisloxamana.com. Once again, the show's called Resume.
Give mom a gift as unique as she is. That's right. Every mom is unique, and we wouldn't want to change a thing about her. Mother's Day is just around the corner. I've got a great way to show mom how much you appreciate her. Surprise her with something unexpected and as unique as she is. How about some Sherry's berries? Oh my God, these things are so good. Freshly dipped strawberries, starting at $19.99 plus shipping, or double the berries for just $10 more. So for $29.99, that covers shipping, that covers double the amount of berries, and this is an exclusive for our listeners. Go to berries.com, click on the microphone at the top right corner, and type in Dr. Drew. That's right, these berries are dipped in milk, white, dark chocolate. Oh my God, they're topped with chips, chopped nuts, swizzles, and they're big, huge strawberries. You just can't stop eating them. Here is the only way to get this amazing deal of freshly dipped strawberries, starting at $19.99, or double the berries for just $10 more. Again, exclusive offer for our listeners only when you use the code Dr. Drew. Visit berries.com, berries.com. Click on the microphone in the right top corner. Type in Dr. Drew. Again, berries.com. This is a limited time offer. Mother's Day is next week, so make sure you order now. All right. Well, there is something about TrueCar a lot of people don't know that is using the TrueCar or TrueCar app can help you buy a used car. There are over 500,000 pre-owned vehicles available from TrueCar certified dealers nationwide. And when you download that TrueCar app or go to TrueCar.com, you'll see what other people paid for the car you want. You'll build the car you want, see that scattergram, and lock in those savings. Using that TrueCar website or the TrueCar app, you can easily find the car you want. So you'll see what other people are paying for in your area. You'll know what the fair price is. You can feel confident. Then you get a guaranteed savings certificate from a TrueCar certified dealer. And then finally, you connect with a local TrueCar certified dealer of your choosing. Your guaranteed savings off MSRP. On average, TrueCar users save $3,279 off MSRP. That's right. You can enjoy a quick, easy buying experience. Over 2 million cars have been sold to TrueCar users by the TrueCar Certified Dealer Network, and there are over 11,000 TrueCar Certified dealers nationwide. So when you're ready to buy a new or used car, visit TrueCar.com or download the TrueCar app and enjoy a better buying experience. Some features not available in all states. Welcome back to Dr. Drew Podcast. I'm here with Ken Kratz. Ken, is there any sort of data you want people to have on you, Twitter handles or anything like that?
No, in fact, you may have been aware that since Making a Murderer came out, my Twitter and Facebook and my website was really attacked mercilessly. I was threatened. My life was threatened. Things and really, unfortunately, and if you'd like to talk a little bit about the cyberbullying, I'd be happy to go there. But it really caused me to have to shut all that down and really don't have the kind of access that I'd really like to have with not only other attorneys but just other citizens that have questions. I always prided myself in making myself available to people even during this whole process. And if they had legitimate questions, I really wanted to talk about that. It got to the point, though, that with the law enforcement involvement and having to investigate some very specific, very troubling threats, not just to me, but to my staff and my family, that we had to really take steps to protect myself. And from a prosecutor's standpoint, from 10 years ago, just having participated in that trial, to thereafter be targeted in such a direct and hate-filled way, I think is really a shame.
Now, these books, is it 3 different books? One on Stephen Avery, one on Dassey, and one on Teresa? Or the one book that we have signed with the publisher is the Avery book. My goal is to eventually write 3 different books. The Dassey case, and I've watched your TV show quite a bit, and especially the month or so after this thing broke, when it was such an obsessive kind of a topic. The Dassey case is every bit as interesting as the Avery case for different reasons. With the false confession and just the manipulation of this young man, both institutional, that is perceived at least from law enforcement, as well as his own family, how he was really sacrificed, and how his plea offer that he had accepted was really thwarted because it was going to make Stephen's case a more difficult case. It's such a tragic outcome for that 16-year-old to have to. Well, I don't think we heard about
that.
I don't think we heard the plea bargain. What was that?
Well, he was given an opportunity to testify against his uncle, and because of his much less involvement, or at least his more limited involvement in the series of crimes, he was provided an opportunity to serve as little as 15 years in prison, and he had accepted that plea bargain, but it wasn't his attorneys who eventually nixed the deal. It was his mother and his grandfather through phone calls urging him, in fact, directing him not to accept the plea bargain and to make sure that he goes to trial, because if he did, and this is the real disturbing telephone calls and things, was that it was going to hurt Stephen's case, and that this family lived really almost a cult-like existence out on that salvage property, with Stephen being at the very center of everything that went on. And so Brendan, although being much less involved, unfortunately, and as a prosecutor, even at the time I said unfortunately, he was made to choose a path that could only have led to life imprisonment, and that's what he ended up with. And that's just, it's sad. It's not part of the story. Certainly, that making a murderer ever told anybody isn't something that you even want to believe a mother or a grandfather would engage in. But it happened, and of course it'll be part of my book and part of the story as I finally get to tell the other side, and hopefully be able to show the general public the kind of evidence that was presented in this 7-week trial, and then in the Dassey trial, which followed it up, that made this whole planting defense nonsense exactly that, and the jury didn't have any problems with dispelling those suggestions and finding both of them guilty.
Well, I took a lot of grief on social media, too, for saying that people were believing a television show. They're watching a television show, a documentary with a point of view, mm-hmm. and being a judge and jury based on that. So I think people will be interested in seeing what really happened. My question, I have a slightly different question, which is, mm-hmm. It seemed to me the way you laid out what had happened that horrible day, based on the evidence that we saw in the TV series anyway, mm-hmm. didn't quite fit with what I think probably actually happened. Am I right on that?
Well, it's interesting. You as I assume, and maybe this is a wrong assumption, are basing most of that on what was spoon-fed you.
It didn't fit for me, right?
This docudrama, and they picked and chose the facts that you got to that you got to see, and it wasn't at all what the jury got to see. And I think when you realize the editing that went down, when you realize the omission of evidence, it really is troubling. I think it's irresponsible the way that was shown, and not so much that a movie was made that way, but that they would call it a documentary. That they wouldn't call it exactly what it was, some advocacy piece or something like that. Because I think the general public, and I think legitimately they believe that this may not be all of the evidence, but at least it's going to be a representative sampling of what the jury was shown, and be able to lead to kind of a good faith conclusion about what had happened. But when you when your design is not to tell the real story, but your design is advocacy, when your design is to lead the audience to a specific conclusion, that is that Mr. Avery was the victim of not only a wrongful conviction, but likely police corruption or planted evidence, then it leads to this kind of thing. They weren't shy about identifying two really well thought of police officers without any evidence, without any kind of proof behind it. just choosing them as casting them, if you will, as the villains, and then didn't make it at all subtle that I was kind of the ringleader of all that, and in a very real sense responsible for perpetrating that whole process. And I just, it's amazing to me that the prosecutor and the cops who worked to convict what really, in my opinion, was a very dangerous, psychopath here, that you'd hold them accountable for that because the evidence pointed to that, and then how they were really in a very sly way able to kind of turn the tables and to turn Avery into the victim and the prosecution into the villain.
You got to remember their job was to capture eyes. Done. They did it. That was their job, to have success on television. That's it. They really did not have other priorities. Let me two questions I have.
Sure,
one is I want to give my theory on what he actually did that day, and then I want you to tell me all the previous criminal activities he had been involved with, because people missed that too. But I think he probably raped her and threw her in the car, maybe hit her over the head, and then shot her in the car. Isn't that what happened?
No, the garage is they meaning making murder, kept suggesting that there were two different theories that we presented. That wasn't true at all. We had said all along the murder happened in the garage, that Avery did shoot Teresa, that it shot her on the garage floor. By the way, my theory was, I never get to give my theory really, because it's a situation where I've got to only talk about what the evidence and what was found. But my theory was, there's a tarp or something that this is happening on, and that would explain so much of the where it happened, but then there wouldn't be blood on the garage floor. And then, of course, Brendan says they threw her in the back of her own SUV when deciding how to dispose of her body, and that's real consistent. But we didn't really understand until Brendan's statement why her own blood would be back there, but not. Here's the other thing. Drew, is it's not just where there's blood, but where there's not blood. And so her blood was on the kind of the side panel of the back cargo area of her SUV, but not on the carpet. And that, of course, if you think about it, suggests her being wrapped in something like a tarp or something, so her head is laying, bleeding, kind of against the side panel, but then there wouldn't be anything left on the carpeting itself. And so that's my own individual theory, and of course I didn't have to go to that extent. We had the forensic anthropologist and others that did a fantastic job putting the case together with the little lead particles and things that we could prove that she had been shot, that the manner and cause of death was exactly what it was. Sometimes, though, you're not going to be able to answer all the questions or put all the pieces together. It's unfortunate, but in a case like this, when you're really starting with not knowing anything, not knowing where the murder happened, we didn't find her bones for the first 4 days that we had the crime scene. It was only the arson investigator that walked by the burn pit that realized that was human material, that it was a charred bone. Homicide cops have been walking past that for days, and it wasn't a homicide cop at all that noticed it. It was an arson investigator who had been at scenes where people had burned in scenes, and he knew what it looked like. And so it was really happenstance that just an arson investigator happened to be there helping because there was such a big crime scene, 38-acre crime scene that was being processed, and it was fortuitous that an arson investigator happened to walk by and said, "Hey guys, we've got some evidence over here that we need to collect," and of course that really changed the whole scope of the investigation.
How come he didn't smash the car up? What do you think about that?
Well, he didn't have the opportunity, really. If you look at it, it was down by the car crusher, but this is a active working business, and so there are citizens and people that not only work there, but people that are there all day, every day.
So and
that was it was Monday. Late Monday afternoon that this happened, and Saturday, you may recall he had gone to a cottage with his family. Excuse me.
Sometimes.
Let me just. I'm talking too much here.
Yeah.
Sorry. He'd gone to this cottage and had planned to come back that afternoon. And our theory was, of course, that would have been the first time that he would be on the property unabated or with the opportunity to crush the car. But it was nothing more challenging as far as figuring out that he just hadn't been alone on the property and able to do that yet.
And finally, what were some of the other crimes he committed or alleged to have committed? Because it was a pretty long list, isn't it?
But yeah, the defense allowed, during making a murder, Stephen Avery himself or his attorneys to describe his prior history. We had the burning cat situation where Avery simply described it as hanging out with the wrong crowd and really more hijinks than anything else.
He was an adult. He was like 24 or something. He burned a cat alive.
It wasn't. Well, he soaked the cat in oil and gas and threw the cat on the fire. And of course, some of the troubling facts that they'll never tell you is the cat jumped off the fire and ran around on fire. And Avery then picked up the burning cat and put it back on the fire so he could watch it suffer.
Yeah.
And of course, you know what that means, and I know it because I've watched your show and I've watched you talk about that being the precursor to many individuals, both mass murderers and serial killers, and just what kind of process mentally they have that does that, the sadistic nature, and that's really how it starts, is with the animal abuse rather than through people. But it, of course, advanced to crimes of violence, pointing firearms at others, reckless endangerment, driving them off the road. But there's also a couple of rapes that he's alleged to have engaged in that the jury never heard about, that we had information about with Mr. Avery. I always say when somebody ends up in a rape lineup, it isn't an accident that they've ended up in that lineup, and so you've got to understand the kind of behaviors that Mr. Avery had engaged in up to that point, and it's a real tragedy that he was wrongfully convicted, and he had such a legitimate claim of being wronged, and then to get out of prison and have that lawsuit pending, and really had a very real chance at turning his life around, and then to make the choices that he did is not only sad, but it had such an impact on so many people, and I don't want us to forget about Teresa Halbach and about her family, and that we're talking about a very real 25-year-old with very real dreams and a real family, and it shouldn't be just relegated to a footnote in the Stephen Avery case. This is very much the Teresa Halbach homicide, and every opportunity I get to mention that, I take it.
Yeah, it was a terrible tragedy, and I don't think people. You're right. They get so caught up in so many other aspects of it, and like with every one of these killings, where people say it was someone else. Well, where is that guy? Stephen Avery's put away. Magically, it seemed to take care of everything, just magically. There were weird stories of him masturbating on hoods of people's cars and stuff. Really bizarre behavior is what I was hearing. Was any of that substantiated?
Well, sure. He was convicted, of that very thing. That was the motive behind the reckless endangerment when he drove that woman off the road.
Oh.
So so these aren't just allegations; they're convictions, and that's very hard to ignore. Although they did their best in making a murderer to do just that.
Yeah, I guess it was. I mean, the IQ of both these guys made it very difficult, I think, didn't it?
Yeah, except let's remember, Avery was very savvy. I mean, this is a guy who was able to really avoid lots of apprehension for and hiding of evidence and things like that. Of course, he couldn't sustain that. He couldn't hide everything. DNA eventually caught up with him. But I suspect that from the 18 years he did spend in prison or whatever else that caused him to learn what he did some things very well. Doctor, you may be familiar with. I talked about this cult-like existence. It seemed that this family kind of propped each other up and made up for each other's deficits. Does that make sense? So when some of the people weren't as good at some things, they would turn to this system, this family system to survive. And Avery, of course, had his strengths, and that was his cunning, and in at least his own way, he's quite charming. And
there was something about him too that reminded me. It just made me think of fetal alcohol syndrome.
Yeah.
The cognition, the body habitus, the ears. It's just something about it. Maybe it wasn't a classic, but I thought, I wonder if that's what this is ultimately. So, but listen, Ken, I've got to wrap this up. This has been fascinating, and I mostly appreciate you being so forthcoming about your own struggles in recovery and your success in recovery. And as Patrick Krill said earlier, your willingness to come forward. There's a lot more people in the public now talking not just about drug addiction, but about sex addiction. I don't know if you saw Terry Crews came out and talked about his porn addiction. And people are getting an understanding of how common this is now and how devastating it can be. It's a common problem. And it's
because it's such a disease of isolation, and that's the very first thing to allow, in a very real sense, people to come forward without the kind of shaming, that I had gone through. And I understand why that all happened, but if we can take those individuals and at least help them and at least provide them with the same kinds of treatment opportunities that we would if it was a drug addiction or an eating disorder or any of those other things, that would go a long way towards this thing at least being legitimized.
Well, agreed. And it's our sexuality. It's deeply sort of tied to our personhood, and it's in our puritanical heritage is something that we all have weird feelings about. So naturally, there's a lot of stuff that swirls around it when that's where the disorder develops. But it is exceedingly common, and we have very weird, ambivalent attitudes about sexuality in this country. And of course, it manifests when people develop addictions around it. But the drug and the pill thing, it's just so common now, and the attorney issue that's coming finally to the fore. All this stuff is so relevant, so important, and I just am deeply grateful for you being willing to talk about it, Ken.
Well, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity, Doctor. Thanks very much.
All right. Hopefully we'll talk again soon sometime. You take care of yourself.
Take care.
All right, bye. That does it for the Dr. Drew podcast. Hope you all found that very interesting. If you have any questions about it, you can send them in at drdrew.com. Maybe I can get Ken back on sometime. We can maybe address emails, questions you have for him. We'll just do a thing where we just...
Yeah, let's do that. I got a few questions.
Yeah. Do you? Like what?
Oh, I'm making a murderer stuff, not so much about his addiction. But,
all right. We'll get into it. We'll do that maybe next time. But until then, I'll see you then.
For call-in times and topics, follow the show on Twitter at Dr. Drew Podcast. That's DRDREW Podcast. The music from today's episode can be found on the Swingin' Sounds of the Dr. Drew Podcast, now available on iTunes. And while you're there, don't forget to rate the show. The Dr. Drew Podcast is a Corolla Digital production and is produced by Chris Loxamana and Gary Smith. For more information, go to drdrew.com. All conversation and information exchanged during the participation in the Dr. Drew Podcast is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. Do not confuse this with treatment or medical advice or direction. Nothing on these podcasts supplement or supersede the relationship and direction of your medical caretakers. Although Dr. Drew is a licensed physician with specialty board certifications by the American Board of Internal Medicine and the American Board of Addiction Medicine, he is not functioning as a physician in this environment. The same applies to any professionals who may appear on the podcast or drdrew.com. This is Corolla Digital.
Stay tuned for the latest AP News headlines from Podcast One, right after this.
It takes courage to build a small business. Don't risk what you worked so hard for. Protect your small business today with Hiscox. Hiscox offers a new way to buy small business insurance. They tailor their small business insurance coverage to fit your needs, which allows you to buy only what you need. Policies start at $22.50 per month. Plus, it's easy. You can order online or over the phone from a licensed advisor in minutes. Opening any small business comes with a risk. Hiscox can keep you protected. Don't wait to purchase coverage for your small business. Visit Hiscox today to learn more about their services and get a free quote. That's HISCOX.com.
AP Update, I'm Ross Simpson.
Lion Ted. He goes, Donald Trump loves Obamacare. He wants to take Obamacare to the next level. He loves it. I'm saying he's such a liar.
Campaigning tonight in South Bend, Indiana, on the eve of that state's Republican primary, Donald Trump said Ted Cruz is also lying about whether he would build a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border.
We are building the wall, but I got this guy Cruz, Lion Ted. Donald Trump has said he is not going to build the wall. I think he's crazy. Honestly, I think he's crazy.
Ted Cruz says even if he loses to Donald Trump tomorrow in Indiana, it's not going to knock him out of the GOP presidential race.
I am in for the distance. As long as we have a viable path to victory, I am competing to the end.
Trump sees no viable path to victory.
If we don't, they'll win it next week or the week after or the week after. It's fine, because they have no path, whereas I have a very easy path. I mean, we'll win it in the first ballot.
I'm Ross Simpson.